Hey friends, welcome back. Tiffany here. If you are new to the channel, then I sure hope you enjoy your stay and you might consider subscribing if you do. Today I've just got what I would consider some concerns and apprehensions that I, as a mother, have about my son entering kindergarten. I know some of you are probably like, not a big deal. Why is she worried? A little bit of background information. Jackson is currently about 5.5, and when he was 3.5, he was diagnosed with sensory processing disorder, and he is a sensory seeking child. So if you're not familiar with what that is, they mimic some of the symptoms of an ADHD child, where they are very hyperactive. They're constantly seeking out texture and tactile input. In his case, as a seeker, there are a few things that he tends to avoid, such as loud noises, the flush of a toilet, and hand dryers in public restrooms are big. Those he tends to avoid. I have other videos, but that's kind of a little bit of background on him. So when Jackson entered preschool, we sat down with his teachers and some of the school personnel, and we developed an IEP for him. Because at the time, he was what I would consider a runner, so it was unsafe for him. Like if they had a fire drill, it was unsafe for him to not have the hand of an adult if they were to exit the building. That was one thing. Also working on some goals for sitting still, sitting during circle time, and things like that. Now, as he graduated preschool, his IEP, he surpassed many of his goals and he did phenomenal in preschool. So as he's heading into kindergarten, his teachers actually had a difficult time trying to set goals for him because he has been doing so well. He had learned how to sit during circle time. He had very little redirection. Like if he was doing something like outside of what he was supposed to be doing, he didn't have to be redirected more than once typically. And so he really learned to follow the rules in the classroom. As he enters kindergarten, the structure of the classroom will be slightly different. Still pretty laid back because they still have like circle time, and it's still kind of like preschool, but they're gonna have more like hands-on work. And so there's gonna be more sitting and more, you know, the worksheets and the learning. And I'm hoping that he can take the skills that they gave him in preschool and utilize those in the classroom. Another thing that I'm slightly apprehensive about is the fact that he's going from a half-day program into a full-day program. And he has expressed some concerns as well about being in school all day. And so he seems a little nervous about that. And so we've talked about it a lot, and I've kind of explained that, you know, he will have lunch at school with his new friends, but at lunchtime, they only get like 25 minutes or something like that to eat, which is adequate time for a child who knows to sit down and eat their food. But for a child like Jackson, when there are that many people in a lunchroom and the noises and just everything going on where it's so busy, it's very distracting to him. And so I'm worried that it's going to take him a little while to catch on that he needs to sit and he needs to eat, or he's going to be a very hungry little boy by the time he gets home later in the afternoon. So that's something that we've really been talking about. And I know it's little things, but this is my first child entering like anything above preschool. So he's my first like full day school-aged child. And so I just have a little bit of apprehensions with some of his learning and sensory issues that he has, how that's going to present itself in a full day setting. So he did well in preschool, but he was only there for 3 hours. How is that going to present in a child who finds it hard to sit still and who finds it very draining on him when there's a bunch of activity and noises and people and stuff around him? He kind of shuts down, and in his case, that presents as meltdowns sometimes and outbursts. So before he was diagnosed, when he was 3.5, he actually was in another preschool program when we lived in Michigan, but it was for younger kids, like age 2 and 3. And that's when he showed a lot of the outbursts and biting and hitting, and basically he was the bully of the classroom. And it really brought about a lot of negative feelings in himself because he knew he wasn't supposed to be behaving that way, but he didn't know how to process things. Now, looking back, after he had gotten diagnosed and we know what we know, most likely he was acting out and biting and hitting because he didn't know how to process the noises and just everything going on around him. You have a classroom of 15 or 20 2- and 3-year-olds. There's a lot going on. And that was just it was too much input for his body to register in a way that seems normal for a neurotypical child. That was difficult for him. The way that he handled that was to outwardly express that things were difficult for him. And so that was the biting and the hitting and the hiding under tables, and that wasn't good behavior. So that's how things were presenting, and I'm afraid that as he goes into the full day setting again, that some of those things might present themselves, because when he gets frustrated, he still at this age doesn't really know how to control his emotions and especially his anger. So when he gets upset or frustrated, that presents as anger in him, and he has outbursts. These are just the things that are going through my mind as his mother, and I'm trying to talk with him and really kind of prep him before he heads off to school in a few weeks, because he has a lot of good tools, and he did so well in preschool. So his teachers don't think that I have anything to be worried about, which I hope they're right, because there's nothing worse than having a child who's having difficulties in the classroom, and depending on how those difficulties present themselves, that's hard. It's hard to handle as a parent. It's hard to come to the realization that maybe your child needs the extra help. And so he still has his IEP in place. He will still get speech therapy in the classroom. He will still get some one-on-one with special education, like therapist / like aide, just to help with any behavioral things that may present themselves. So he has a good support system in place, and I'm really thankful for that. So hopefully these concerns are basically nothing, and it's just me worrying, because that's what I tend to do. Just curious, if you have a child who has either been on an IEP or had difficulties as they headed into full day school, such as like kindergarten, I'm curious to see if you have any tips for me, because Mama's stressing a little bit, and he starts school in just a few weeks. Any advice is welcome. Please leave it down below in the comments. I just wanted to get all of that off my chest. Hopefully it made sense. I might have been kind of all over the place. You know, basically I've just got a little bit of apprehension, and he has a little nervousness as well. He's excited to start school. He's excited. He's going to a different school than he did last year, so he will have all new friends. So the school he's going to be starting doesn't have a preschool program, so he and Alice will be in different schools. And that's another thing that he's kind of nervous about, and she's really nervous about, because she's used to having Jackson at the same school and riding the same bus as her, and that's going to be a big change for her, but that's another story for another day. We hope things will go well, and he's a good kid. Hopefully some of those issues that we've had in the past don't rise up with all the changes of being in school for, you know, roughly 8 hours a day. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and until next time, I will see you later. Bye.